Hello and welcome to this Institute for Strategic Leadership Business Forum. I'm Andrew Patterson. To support leaders as we navigate these unprecedented times, ISL has created this weekly Leader Forum. We want to provide a community for learning where panelists share their experience and insights as we move from business as usual to leadership in crisis. This week, we're joined by three CEOs to discuss how they've adapted their leadership style to this new operating paradigm and what they're noticing about engagement and productivity of their now virtual teams. So let me introduce our panelists. Firstly, Mark Rushworth is the Group CEO of Education New Zealand, the country's largest private education provider. Mark joined Up Education in 2018, bringing sector leadership experience in a number of growth-oriented organisations, including 12 years previously as CEO at Paymark, iHug, and the fixed and broadband division of Vodafone. Mark, welcome to you. Mike Taylor is the founder and managing director of BBT Digital, one of New Zealand's fastest growing digital marketing and software development agencies. Founded in 2014, BBT is driven by a simple desire to help New Zealand businesses grow and win globally. Mike, hello. And John Wadsworth, CEO of the Institute for Strategic Leadership. John joined ISL in 2018 after holding CEO and executive dean roles, as well as several national board roles. John, welcome to you as well. Obviously, we're living through an economic shock right now that no one could have predicted 6 months ago. Yet, like all shocks, it's causing us to work and engage differently. I wonder if we begin perhaps by just getting a sense from each of you about how you've moved from a business as usual paradigm to one of crisis leadership, and what that paradigm shift has involved, particularly from a leadership perspective. Mark, if we could perhaps start with you.
Yeah, indeed. We are in crisis mode for the last couple of weeks, which for us has meant a mindset shift from an EBIT growth business to one that's focusing on cash. So it's all about, at the moment, preserving cash, cutting cost, and then we'll get to the point where we start to reimagine what are the opportunities that come out the back of this. My leadership style has changed immensely, very directive now, very clear on what needs to be done now, strong prioritization, as well as increased communications.
And have you had any previous experience in a crisis situation? Anything that you're drawing on personally, Mark?
Look, indeed, I sort of liken this to and how we need to operate. We need to operate like a startup. And I was very fortunate to be in a startup about 8 years ago, Pacific Fibre, where every day you're focusing on cash, you're prioritizing what you can do in the business to hit that next milestone. So I'm sort of drawing on my leadership experience during that time to use today.
And we know startups largely operate in a crisis mode in that early stage of the business, so some good insights to draw on there. Mike, your perspective.
Yeah, I think I echo a lot of what Mark said, really. The focus is very much gone to what is it that we need to do right now in order to kind of get through this period, and that is very much a focus on cutting costs and cash. But also really making sure that we're there for our clients, because they're going through the same thing as well as what we are. We all are. We're all in the same boat. And so with my staff, it's about extreme focus on what are the things that they need to be doing right now that you know is going to help us get through this and help our clients as well. So very much more directive, whereas normally we would sit back and get everybody's views and opinions on things, etc. And we still do a little bit of that, obviously. But you know, right now it's about, team, this is what we need, and this is what I need you to do, and you know, this is when I need you to get it done by.
Have you been able to draw on any prior experience, Mike, something like this? I mean, obviously this is a whole new order for everybody, but anything from your own business experience that you've been able to use at this time?
Yeah, so BBT's been around 6 years, nothing on this scale, obviously, and nothing like this that I've specifically gone through, but a lot of it is just back to basics, the real simple fundamentals of business that we're just really focused on right now. So a lot of the learnings that we've had in the very early days, a lot of the stuff that we were doing then, we are now looking at redoing, you know, or are focusing on right now.
John, that's a good way of encapsulating it. Businesses are in a survival mode now. How are you seeing the need to change and adapt leadership styles for this new paradigm that we're operating in?
Well, I think it's more important than ever for leaders to be really emitting a positive energy and optimism. People are going to cue off the leader and the energy that they're emitting. So really very important to maintain that. Also important, I think, to maintain a really key growth mindset. I mean, this is an opportunity for, crisis breeds innovation. This is an opportunity to work through new ways of doing things and work through new things, new services, new products delivered in a different way, and really adapt and reinvent to the current environment. Critically important. I think the other key thing as a leader, really focus on your team. You're not going to get far without your team aligned and unified, operating in a really open, high trust way. So critical to have that relationship with your team, make sure that connection is very strong.
We'll talk about engagement and productivity in the second part of this discussion, but let's just focus on some of the immediate priorities. Mike, what have been some of the specific actions that you've had to take? Obviously, simply connecting people up, technology has played a big part of that, Zoom and so forth, being able to do that. But how have you managed these last few weeks in terms of dealing with immediate priorities?
Yeah, so I guess because we're digital natives, the setting up remotely from home wasn't actually an issue for us. So that was a really positive. Literally the day that the lockdown happened, we were set up, prepared. We had already been working from home for a couple of days. So the technology side of things wasn't there for us. The challenge really is about just communicating with the team so that they know exactly not only where we are, but where our clients are as well. So as I've been working through this from a leadership standpoint, I've been brutally honest around what clients are rolling things back, what clients need to put things on hold, the state of what our clients are in, because depending on how our clients are, depends on how we are. So from that standpoint, I've just been communicating every day, daily stand up with the team. This is what's going on. This is what's changed in the last 24 hours. This is where I need you focused, and this is the things that you can be doing right now to help us through this. And some of those are pretty tough conversations when you're talking about cutting costs and that kind of thing. But, by having everybody informed, they understand the thinking that's going on. And the team, in my experience, have risen to the occasion. They're very supportive. Every day they're saying, hey, Mike, is there anything I can do to help? Is there anything else you need from me, etc.? So it's been really interesting how the teams kind of galvanized together through this period.
What personal observations have you made about yourself and the fact that obviously you don't have people around you? You can't just walk outside your office and engage with people. You're having to be much more conscious about this. What have you observed about how your leadership style has changed within that environment?
Yeah, I think as great as the video technology is, it's much harder to read body language through this. So I've just been a lot more explorative around how are you? How is things with your family? Are you okay financially? What other stresses do you have? And just getting through a lot of those kind of conversations. And a lot of obviously there's the business side of things, but also, the rent holiday for mortgages, my staff, they have mortgages. What does that mean for them? Is it the right thing for them to do? And trying to help and support that way as well. So a lot of leadership from the professional standpoint, but a lot more just being, I guess, human, being supportive on that personal relationship side of things as well. So that's something that I didn't probably anticipate I would be doing as much of, 2-3 weeks ago.
Mark, what's been your experience?
Well, sort of in that crisis mode, first of all, looking across all of our business and how can we manage cash flows and cut costs across our businesses. But before we did any of that, we've got 15,000 students that we needed to find a way to stream their classes. So as of Monday, we've had tutors with laptops streaming their normal timetable classes out to students, but we've had to enable students, in many cases, provide them a laptop and a connection so they can stream in. So there's all those kind of immediate issues that we've needed to resolve. And we've done that kind of across all the businesses in Up Education. with daily stand-ups, BCP meetings with different exec teams, just looking at, right, what needs to be done now. And our approach has always been, and is one of, we've got to act fast. And speed is far more important than perfection in this particular case. It's just getting it done and prioritizing.
So how are you a different leader perhaps now from the leader you were 6 weeks ago, or are you broadly the same?
Well, no, sort of different leadership styles, and I draw more on directive, but at the same time, sort of what's really interesting is when you're talking to people and you find you've suddenly been let into their front living room or their TV room in the conversation, what you end up talking about quite often is what's going on within their life, because you're now part of everything going on within their home. So as Mike kind of said, you soon realize, and you knew it anyway, but people's engagement and productivity is often driven by everything else going on within their life, not just what's going on within work. And so I'm very sort of open to that. And you find you have far broader conversations of how you can help. And yes, realizing that people respond to stress in different ways. And during this crisis, there's a lot of stress going along in everyone's lives.
John, Mike and Mark both raise, good points about this kind of rise of empathy and the fact that CEOs have got to be, not just running organizations, but, they are inextricably part of people's lives as well. And this crisis is obviously highlighting that. What advice are you giving about managing what can often be a very difficult relationship?
Yeah, one of the things that Mike and Mark really commented on is how deliberate they need to be in terms of making that connection. It's made a little easier by being invited into people's homes and seeing a different side of that, seeing cats go across the screen and dogs yapping at the heels and kids coming in for a cuddle, and it really does open up a connection in quite a different way. And our workplace and many workplaces in New Zealand, very young and very diverse, and we've got people from the UK, from France, from Germany, from Sri Lanka, from India. They've got not only, and they're a long way from home, so they've not only got that worry about what's happening in their own countries, they've got the impact on their own lives. So, and we're very much focused on creating a family within and a family culture within ISL, and that's a real anchor that takes care of the whole person.
Let's talk about, just to drill into that point a little bit more. Mike and Mark, that does create conflict for you too, though, as CEOs, because obviously, your principal role is to focus on the business, but obviously in this environment, you've got these kind of distractions. How are you streamlining yourselves to be able to, I guess, find a sort of differentiation between those two aspects of being a leader? Mike, perhaps to you first.
Yeah, I think from my side, recognizing that right now the focus is very much a human focus. Yes, the business, we will get through, and we've got to make some harsh calls through that. But if you're communicating effectively, I think people understand. Everybody knows that this is a major, and so the framework around streamlining that is just letting staff know that this is what the situation is, this is what's going on, this is what it means for you, and this is the impact it's going to have, and this is where I need you focused, and this is where you can help. And if you're doing that effectively enough, my big focus right now is no surprises to the team, giving them as much warning as possible when things are happening and what is going on. And so by taking care of that, it's actually streamlined a lot of other stuff, on the tail end, a lot of the business stuff. The team's kind of taking care of that because they know the situation, they know what's going on, and they know what they need to focus on. So just by having that small framework in place has helped us immensely with my time, and my time can then be focused on strategy, planning through this, and obviously our clients as well, and helping them out as much as possible.
Mark, have you thought of this as potentially sort of a sliding scale, that at the moment, obviously it's a very human to human focus, but in the next week or two, that's probably going to have to change as you refocus on the priorities of the business. Have you thought about, developing, a stage managed approach to this for yourself?
Yeah, as I said earlier, we're in crisis mode at the moment. I'd see us doing that for, say, the remainder of the week, and then we start to turn our minds to, well, how do we do what we do, but in this new world? What does this new world look like? How do we reimagine what we do? How do we look for opportunities out the back end of it? And that helps with your communication when you're talking to staff today, because you want to provide them confidence. You want to set out a vision of what the business is going to look like in this different world, so they can ride through those difficult times and know, yes, we're all wearing some pain now, but light at the end of the tunnel is a great opportunity, and keep focused on that. So there's communications. There's also, so part of my role is energizing the team, and then connecting more so the dots across the business, because I get the ability to talk to as many people as I can during the day. And where you can't bump into people around the water cooler, you can't have those accidental conversations. Part of my job is actually connecting people that have different thoughts and bringing them together. But we'll get through this. There's light at the end of the tunnel. It's just that when we don't know how long it's going to be dark for, you've got to keep positive.
John, thoughts on how leaders transition through these different phases, I guess, of what the crisis is delivering to us?
Yeah. We've probably gone from an environment of BAU where it's about empowering and enabling and engaging and encouraging and cheerleading, into now a period which is very directive, bringing structure, certainty, clarity, communication. There will be a transition back into the new world as this reset occurs, and there will be a positive element to that reset as the benefit of what's happening now begins to emerge, and slowly taking the hand off the direction, and really enabling and moving back to that empowering culture will be a transition that leaders will need to make over time as we emerge out of that crisis.
Well, let's turn now to output issues, particularly in regard to engagement and productivity of what are now, as I've mentioned, are your virtual teams. Clearly, this environment suits those who prefer to be kind of left alone and just left to get on with it, whereas those people who want a stimulating, highly engaging team environment will be feeling somewhat frustrated. Mark, how will you monitor and maintain team engagement, I guess, during this period of crisis, and what have you already learned in this early phase?
Yeah, look, it's all about communications and increased communications. So that's at sort of a number of different levels across the entire organization. So every couple of days we send out an all staff email with video links sort of within there, just telling them, what we're doing, why we've done it, and the impact and the vision sort of set down the end. Across my direct team, we use humor a lot, which is a good thing during a crisis as well. So we have a WhatsApp kind of account, and we're in there and we're posting videos and funny little captions. And I received one just yesterday, which was talking about Up Educational's digital transformation was led by A, CEO, B, CTO, or C, COVID-19. And just little things like that take the intensity out of what's going on across New Zealand, across the globe. We also use a team pulse, and we've been using this for the last 3 months, which is a set of questions that go out to my direct team every 3 weeks, and it asks them about their kind of energy levels or mojo, talks about engagement and their productivity. It takes them about 5 minutes, and I get then a dashboard. What that allows me to do is to have the conversations with my team going, what can I do differently, and what could you do differently? So it opens up an avenue for frank, honest feedback, which is really, really powerful during times of crisis.
And Mike, your thoughts on the engagement and productivity question, and I guess particularly how you're monitoring and checking in with your team?
Yeah, for us, we're a time and cost business like most service businesses are. So the productivity measurements that we've got, they stay the same. You know, all the tools that we're using there are standard. That's just business as usual for us. We also use the My Team Pulse system, and the thing that we found quite good about that over the last 3 or 4 months is because it's an anonymous survey. Although, you know, I thought as a leader I was having good conversations with people. The anonymity of that allows for more frank discussions to be had, and also feedback from me around what I can be doing better as a leader. And I think now more than ever, that's something that, you know, we're just going to keep drawing back to, because, you know, people's mojo has changed throughout this period. The good thing on the engagement side of things, and from a business standpoint, is our metrics actually haven't slipped or dropped back in any significant way over the last couple of weeks. And, you know, from my side, it's trying to make sure that we focus on the wins as much as we possibly can. You know, yesterday, one of our team hit their 5-year milestone. So, you know, I'm taking a photo, I'm sending it out, doing a little video to our whole team. Here's me having a beer, here's to your 5 years kind of thing. So focusing on those small wins as much as possible is also having a big impact. And the whole team jumps on the chat and they're all taking photos, having a beer for them, etc. as well. So, but by having the pulse that's going out there allows me to understand the vibe of the team, allows me to understand where I need to kind of surgically implant myself from a virtual standpoint in order to have those kind of conversations, which has been really valuable.
Isn't there a risk, though, here around maintaining team productivity? Because obviously, you know, we're in this kind of novel environment at the moment where, you know, people are engaged because it's different. But we are going to continue to operate for some time in this virtual online context surrounded by uncertainty and anxiety. Have you thought about this kind of next stage in terms of maintaining productivity as people perhaps start to become a bit fatigued by this environment?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're working through things and kind of bits and pieces that we can be doing in order to help that. Even little things like, you know, what's your routine like, team? I'm personally struggling for a routine. I used to get up and go for a run every morning. I haven't had the energy to do that, etc. And that's okay right now. You know, that's the reality. We're all very stressed and we're all emotionally drained right now. But, you know, we need to start working towards what our new normal kind of looks like, whether that's from a personal standpoint or a business standpoint. And I think that finding that routine, finding that new, you know, that new way of us doing business for the next 6 to 8 to 12 weeks is going to be important. And to Mark's point, you know, we're in crisis mode at the moment. By the end of this week, we can start to look to implement lots of those different things across our organization.
Mark, your thoughts?
Look, it sort of comes back, as I said, there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's having that vision out there. There's going to be a great opportunity for businesses that come out of this to reimagine, to do things differently. So, you know, we've got to batten down the hatches a little bit, whether it's 6, 8 weeks or 6, 8 months. You know, it's hard to say, but it's having confidence, having energy, communicating all the way through, and bringing your team with you.
And John, obviously challenging CEOs at, you know, multiple levels in terms of, you know, switching between these different modes. You know, what are your observations at the moment, and what are you drawing on in terms of advice at these times?
Yeah, I mean, it's critically important to have an evidence base of what's going on within your team. And one of the things that we're very great at is putting on a brave face. And we've talked a lot about the stress and the pressures that people are under, and that happens both within their work context and within their personal lives. So I think the first thing is to have a real evidence base and a bit of a circuit breaker on understanding what's actually going on with people. And there's a clear correlation between mojo and engagement. So while the stress-fueled engagement, because it's a crisis and we're reacting and we're adapting and it's exciting, that's going to, over time, be harder to maintain week in, week out. And if it is in that 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 8 months period, you know, it's going to be very difficult. So really understanding that difference and the correlation between mojo and engagement, and keeping a really close evidence-based eye on that is going to be important. And the other thing with the evidence base is that it leads to conversations that might need to be had, and it lets you know what you don't know. And it's and you can't manage something you're not aware of. You can't lead something you're not aware of. You can't support something you're not aware of. So, having that evidence base, actively engaging in it, and even now, when you might have been doing it once a month previously, from a check-in point of view, it's now sort of every week, every couple of weeks that things are fluctuating so significantly. It's worth keeping a real eye on it.
Andrew, if I can just add to that, sort of what John said, it's really important. We did a team pulse survey last week, and it was about the fourth one we'd done. And I was a little bit reluctant at first to do it because there were fires everywhere and we're all in crisis mode. But I'm pleased that I did, because what I saw coming out the back of it was actually team engagement had lifted, team mojo had lifted, and it was during that crisis period that people were responding really well to the clear purpose of the immediate actions that we needed to do. Over time, it'd be really interesting to measure that in 2 weeks' time, once we've had 3 weeks in lockout. But it's driving those additional conversations, having feedback, asking what I can do differently and what each person can do differently will get us through.
Okay, let's go to some of the questions, because we're getting a number of questions coming through from the audience. I'd like to try and get through as many as we can. So just give your answers as briefly as you can. First question is that you've spoken about diving into people's homes and obviously being more engaged at an empathetic level. How can CEOs help with the mental health of employees? Obviously, this is a critical issue at this time. How are you dealing with that aspect of your leadership at the moment? Mike, perhaps to you first.
Yeah, so I'm sharing experiences as much as I possibly can. I'm talking very openly and candidly about what I'm struggling with through this period. And that's enabling us as a team to share experiences and talk through stuff. We had one just yesterday where one of our team in our daily stand-up Skyped came in via Zoom outside, and he's sitting outside on his table outdoors, because he just needed some sunshine. He needed to be outside, and he's struggling with just being inside all the time. And all of a sudden, somebody else pipes up and says, "I'm struggling with that too. What are you doing?" etc. So, just trying to create that environment where, look, we're all in this together. This is a problem, but we're all there to support each other as well. I'm also reaching out to people individually and just checking in more of a confidential nature. Hey, how are you? How are things? And trying to support as much as I can there. I'm not an expert when it comes to mental health, but in all of my experience managing teams in business and in sport, when you have that teamwork approach, it really helps. So that's kind of what we're trying to do as much as possible. And it's interesting when I lead that conversation and I say what I'm struggling through with this stuff, all of a sudden the team start to share their experiences, and we try and have fun along the way, and we inject a bit of humor in there. But that's what we're doing right now to try and help staff through this as much as possible.
Mike, thanks for that. Mark, a question for you from the audience. How are you getting support from your board and chair and other members of key stakeholders within the organisation?
That's a great question, actually. We meet now with the board every week on a Tuesday, 11 a.m. And we've been going through different scenarios, looking at different models for cash flow. And if anything, it's increased the engagement and the conversations I have with my chair. They're challenging, but also very supportive as we go through this. Really strong feedback. I think we've, as a business, responded perhaps a couple of weeks earlier than anyone else. The fact that we started to manage costs last week. And my board, they sit across 16 different companies, and the feedback back from them was, you're doing world-class work here. You're ahead of everyone else in the cycle. So it's little things like that. Even a CEO needs a positive, comment occasionally, just to build up our mojo as well. So little things like that. If you're a chair, if you're a board, actually reach out to your CEO, tell them when they're doing something well, and give them clear direction and priorities. That's what everyone's looking for during this time. We all have a boss.
Another question for you. Are you prioritizing speed or accuracy in decision making at the moment? Keen to hear how you're making decisions on the run.
Yeah, look, I said before, it's all about speed. Speed wins over perfection. We're and every business should do this in my mind. Doesn't matter the size of the business, they should now start to think like a startup. Startups are all about preserving cash, getting to the next milestone, but not losing sight of that end vision of what they're gunning for. So, and with that, you've got to run at a pace ahead of everyone else in order to take the share or get your product, get market fit as a startup. So no different now for any business across New Zealand or the globe. Think like a startup.
Mike, you mentioned culture strengthening. How do we reduce the C-kits whilst people are in downtime?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to work through, I guess. Again, when it comes back down to that communication and how people are feeling and how they're going, and just continually trying to work on that teamwork as much as we possibly can. We're trying to work through those. We're trying to mindset shift the team. This is a problem. We deal with problems every single day in our business, whether that's a problem with a client on a campaign or whether that's a particular piece of technology that we're trying to work through. So all the problems that we're bringing to the table, we've just got to understand what the priorities are and where our focus needs to be in order to kind of get through that. And just echoing what Mark said there around thinking like a startup, we had a client just recently that's an online SaaS-based business. And, they're looking at reinventing how they're going to market with a completely free model to try and support their users as much as they possibly can. And it's been interesting, some of the larger SaaS businesses out there doing the same thing. They know that they've got a customer base there that's struggling. So they're looking at how can we get in front of hearts and minds as much as possible. So looking at thinking things differently and looking at that innovation, I think is incredibly important. But again, it's a problem. How do you work through it as effectively as possible?
Right, final question. What are you finding are the most relevant questions that you're asking in your pulse surveys right now? Mark, perhaps first to you.
What's your mojo like? What's your energy levels like? Is the number one question we kind of ask. How recharged is their battery, and what can I do to help?
Mike?
Yeah, the questions in our pulses haven't changed since we've been doing them the last 3 or 4 months. So it's, what's your mojo? How's your emotional resilience right now? What can I be doing better as a leader? And how are you going with the rest of the team? Those 3 questions form the basis of a lot of really good constructive communication and discussion.
John, this is the essence of it, really, isn't it? It's this connectivity, staying connected, obviously, and I guess really having the pulse of your team and being critically aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one tool. It supplements but doesn't replace the morning check-ins, the end of day checkouts, the one-on-ones, but it informs and provides a much richer picture of what's actually going on.
And what about this issue too? The CEOs are kind of supposed to know everything, but they're operating in a very uncertain climate. So that creates a certain degree of vulnerability, I guess. What are your thoughts in terms of just obviously, being honest in this fact that we don't all know, we don't know what this outcome is going to look like.
Yeah, that's right. I think be honest and be really clear what we do know and what we don't know, because I think people will understand more than ever before. So as much as we want to provide absolute certainty and clarity, that needs to be balanced with an understanding and quite a measured approach that we actually don't know what might be around the corner and what might emerge for us. So it's really mind setting that we're probably tacking up the harbour and zigzagging a bit rather than going in a straight line. And there might be the odd U-turn, but as long as there's openness and transparency and complete honesty around that, I think people will appreciate it.
And finally, I'll ask each of you perhaps just to share your most valuable insight or something that you've observed about yourself, or something you've learned in the last 3 weeks that you'd like to share with others, and perhaps also just acknowledging your own self-care as CEOs. How are you taking care of yourself, Mike?
Yeah, right now I'm kind of operating on kind of coffee and adrenaline. To be perfectly honest with you, there's certainly no healthy routine going on, and I know a lot of our clients are the same way. So it's recognizing that, and if that's happening to me, then it's certainly happening to my team as well. So the biggest thing for us, and what I've been really humbled by actually, is by having clear communication with the team, saying, look, there's a lot of stuff here, team, I just don't know, so any thoughts or opinions are valid. It's been interesting to see how the team's risen through that and really stepped up in a big way. So that's probably been the biggest surprise. But also, as I mentioned earlier, focusing as much as possible on, okay, let's look at what the new normal looks like so that we can start to get into those routines. I know as a leader that I'm not sustainable right now. I need to change. I need to get, some good sleep. I need to, get into that good routine as well, because the business will have an impact if I don't, and business will be impacted if I don't. So yeah, it's about just, again, recognizing that, checking in on yourself and getting feedback from others around you, is just as important as well through this period.
Mark, your tip or insight and your own self-care?
What I'm looking after is, first to myself, put on your own oxygen mask. So lots of sleep, healthy eating. I've cut out alcohol now for 30 days. That's hard work, but it's great. Lots of runs. So sort of looking after myself so I can be more productive in work. Final message, look, stay indoors and be kind.
And John, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, look, as leaders, we often focus on others or focus on the business. It's critically important to focus on ourselves, and do something that re-energizes us. If that's a exercise or walks or a bike ride or being really present with your family over a meal, whatever it is that recharges our own batteries will make us better for others. In terms of the tip, something that's really front of mind for us as a business is that in all the decisions that we're making now, we're balancing that with the need to emerge with strength. So if we're making decisions now that allow us to adapt and respond in the present moment, that also doubles up. That means we're going to be a stronger business out the other side, then that's a good decision.
Well, that concludes our first ISL Leader Forum. I'd like to thank our panelists, Mark, Mike and John, for sharing their experiences and insights with us today. And thank you, our audience, for watching and participating. This live stream will be edited into bite-sized chunks and available to view on the ISL website. That's www.leadership.ac.nz in the coming days. A reminder that our second forum with panelists from the essential services sector will be live streamed on Wednesday, the 8th of April at 11 a.m. More information will be provided in the coming days. I look forward to welcoming you back for another informative half hour. And in addition to the Leader Forums, ISL will be running a weekly leadership pulse for all ISL alumni throughout New Zealand and Australia to get an insight into how leaders are faring under the current crisis. So look forward to having you back. I hope you can join us again. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Andrew Patterson for ISL.